I'm Jack, and welcome back because today I'm going to give you guys a review for a very highly anticipated season of TV, Stranger Things 4. It is developed and created by the Duffer Brothers, and it brings back the cast of the show with some brand new faces. And with that said, let's get started. Stranger Things 4 is set 6 months after the events of Season 3, with our heroes now separated, follow different storylines as they take on the Upside Down on numerous fronts, where the characters of Hawkins are now taking on a new foe called Vecna, who is killing people in Hawkins, and then the second plotline involving Eleven regaining her powers, and the third and final plotline evolving around Joyce and Murray as they go to Russia to find Harbour. Forgive me for the change in scenery once again as I film my review for this season. Nevertheless, I really like this show, even though coming into the season I had some worries, especially with longer episodes, and so as how are they going to continue making another story with these characters after the events of Season 3, and with just a few things because of the long wait, and I was really just curious to see where they were going to take things with Season 4, and what I was hearing had me excited, but I reserved my level of excitement before coming into the season. And now that I finished both Volume 1 and Volume 2, it is safe to say that I loved Stranger Things 4. It is the best the series has ever been. I love the much more darker, mature tone here. It really gives me vibes from It and Nightmare on Elm Street, especially with the villain of Vecna. And I really like how mature this season is. It really feels different compared to the previous 3 seasons, where Season 3 had a very gross but so as lighthearted fun tone, but this season is the exact opposite of that. And I love how there's so much at stake. There's so much danger for our characters, and now that the show is so much grander than it has ever been. And even the budget, you can tell they spent so much time making this season, especially in the height of the pandemic. And I think they did a really phenomenal job making this show, because longer episodes here actually worked so well. I was afraid they were going to be a little bit much, but they actually felt right for this season, because I could not imagine them making 50-minute episodes off of this story. I think they did exactly what they need to in just hour-and-a-half long episodes, and I was invested. And even if they were long, I always wanted to jump into the next episode, to the point where it took me 5 days to finish Volume 1, because I was so hooked that I did not care how long the episodes were. And following that, you can tell the production value and visual effects increased so much. Earlier seasons looked really good, but this season felt like a movie. They felt so cinematic and real, especially when you see the Upside Down and Hawkins and all these different places our characters go to in Russia or California or in Hawkins, Indiana, and it looks terrific. It is just some of the best visuals and production value I've ever seen for a TV show ever. And I love how it really shows you that this show is consistently increasing in terms of quality and for what they were able to do in creating the show. Next thing I want to get out of the way is the acting is phenomenal. Always loved Millie Bobby Brown as 11. She is terrific here, especially with this circumstances and all that. I know our characters are very much separated for a majority of the season, so you have like all of these different storylines. But one of the biggest standouts of the season is Sadie Sink as Max Mayfield. I like Max, but she's never been a personal favorite character of mine, but I loved her this season. There are some amazing moments from Sadie, and I think she really channeled just the layers, and I really cared for her character this season. And with all the stuff that's going down for her, and so as great newcomers like Joseph Quinn as Eddie, loved Eddie this season. He is a great new character, and it continues the tradition of the show having great characters that just come in with the season, like Bob with Season 2, Alexi with Season 3, now Eddie with Season 4. He is great, and I love his relationship to characters like Dustin and Steve and Nancy and Robin. They're great. And obviously, knowing me, Dustin and Steve are probably my 2 favorite characters on the show. There's still a really good amount of stuff that both characters do this season. And I love Gaten Matarazzo and Joe Keery as these characters. Their dynamic is pitch perfect. And I love what they do with the storyline. And when it comes to just all of that, I think everybody was great. Even Noah Schnapp and Finn Wolfhard and Caleb McLaughlin, just everybody was really good. And David Harbour as Hopper. I was very curious to see what they're going to do with that character, even though we knew from season 3 that he actually isn't dead. So for a while, I was wondering, how is this going to tie into things? And I love David Harbour as Hopper once again this season, where he's in a much different place this season. He's not necessarily in a good spot. And I love how David Harbour shows that with his character, with everything that's happened to him from the start of the show to this very moment. I think he does that really well. And Brett Gelman as Murray is funny. I love his storyline with Joyce, played by Winona Ryder, who's once again excellent. Pretty much everybody this season is really good here, and I love that we got to see all these characters in this very dark storyline. Vecna is easily the best villain of the show because this is a very different kind of threat that our characters are facing. They're not facing the Mind Flayer again, or just a Demogorgon, or some Demo Dogs. They're taking on a powerful foe like Vecna. The actor that plays him is fabulous, and I don't want to get into spoilers at this particular segment, which I will do later after the letter grade, but he was amazing. It is just one of those characters where I was scared for our protagonist every time Vecna is looming, whether someone's on the verge of dying or whenever Vecna has his sights on somebody. I was terrified for our characters, and I love that the very end of that first episode really sets the stage for how powerful of a threat Vecna is. And from that point all the way till the end of the season, I was loving Vecna as a threat, and I think this season does him really well. I was very invested with him, from the mystery of Vecna, who is this character, why is he doing this, and so as how he ties into everything. Vecna is a very good villain and easily the best of the show. And this season is easily the most emotional of the 4, because now that our characters are separated and they're older, of course, than the last time we saw them, and some characters are in very bad places. Nobody is safe. And even by the time the finale ended, I was on a roller coaster of emotions this season. I was scared for our characters. There are moments where our characters die, and so as are in really bad spots, and so as with everything that's happening in Hawkins and Russia and everything that was going on, I was feeling so many things, and happy would not necessarily be one of them, aside from a few moments, because there are truly a lot of really bad things happening to our characters. Season 1 had that, Season 2 had that, and so did Season 3. But I've never felt this much danger until now for our characters. And there are moments where the back half of episode 4, ending of episode 6, episode 7, the final 2 episodes, I was feeling so emotional at many points in the season because I was so surprised at how this show was able to make as amazing of a comeback as they did 3 years later with season 4. And so as what happens with these characters, how they progress things, and how we wrap up the season. I was feeling so many things. There were moments where I was shedding a tear, and moments where I was feeling so upset on the inside because so many dangerous things happen to our characters, and because of how the season's happening and where our characters are at, with who's being paired with who, what's happening with Vecna, and so as what they are dealing with, I felt so many things, and there are so many moments that got me freaking out, and this season did all that incredibly well. This is some of the most investing pieces of TV I've seen in quite some time. Aside from a few shows, Stranger Things 4 went so high up there. Every single episode, I was so curious to see, where are our characters going to go next? What's happening? What is Vecna going to do now? And so as how are Hopper, Joyce, and Murray, how is that going to play out in that Russia storyline? And so as what's happening with Will and Eleven and Steve and Dustin, it's just like, I felt so many storylines were individually really great. Even if there's a lot of things happening, and sometimes it does cut away from things where you want to know more of that storyline, then it cuts to something else. So you have to wait until they go back to that storyline. But overall, the individual storylines are really good, aside from one storyline in particular. And I was so invested with the storyline. I love how it starts. I love how you get that first episode where you're just seeing where everybody's been up to since season 3. And then once you get to episode 2, things go off the rails instantly. And I was invested all the way till the end. I was so hooked that no episode runtime was going to stop me from wanting to hit play on the next episode, because I was so excited for what was going to come and nervous too. Any minor issues I have, which again, do not ruin the season at all, but one storyline in particular does feel very meaningless for most of the season, where whenever we cut to this storyline, it feels like we're just treading water. They have no idea what's happening with everything else, and I didn't feel like much was being accomplished from that side of things. There are a few great moments that come out of that storyline with those characters, but compared to everything else, that felt very much not as investing as everything else. But I still, nevertheless, really enjoyed the storylines as a whole. And there are some odd writing choices that were just made throughout the season that are kind of like, don't know if I can buy into that. And maybe that's not as realistic, but it was the 80s. It's not so much 2022. But overall, I loved Stranger Things 4. It had a great premiere, and it has some of the best moments to ever come out of the show, especially with episodes 4, 7, and 9. And that finale was an absolute roller coaster from start to finish. I loved this season. The show has never been better with season 4. I love what they're able to do, and I think Netflix did a really good job, and so has the Duffer Brothers and the rest of the crew of the show, to make a massive season like this one. And I'm really curious to see how they could potentially top this in Stranger Things 5, which is the final season, because of how amazing this was. So in the end, I'm going to give Stranger Things 4 an A+. Now, it's time to talk about spoilers. I was really loving Max this season, and I was so scared for her character throughout everything once we got to episode 3's ending, where Vecna has his sights on her. And that whole back half of that episode with Running Up That Hill, great song, by the way, and Max and Vecna and the Upside Down, and Dustin, Lucas, and Steve trying to save her, beautiful stuff. That is one of my all-time favorite moments to come out of Stranger Things, and I was feeling so many emotions at that moment. And it really made me love this character even more than I ever did. And it was very tragic to me when she decided to use herself as bait for Vecna so that the crew can kill Vecna. And she ended up in harm's way to the point where she almost died. And I even thought she was dead for a second. She evaded his curse once. Second time, I was so scared that it was going to backfire, and it looked like it did. But you had an amazing rematch between Eleven and Vecna, or after that episode 7 reveal where you found out that Vecna is Henry Creel /1, the lab orderly that Eleven knew back in the day. That was a good reveal, even though I predicted that twist from miles away. But I think it worked well, and I think Jamie Campbell Bower was fantastic as Henry Creel /1 /Vecna, and so as the dynamic with those two, where it made their rematch in the finale feel huge. Where what they did, I was feeling so many emotions. I was so scared for 11 because of how powerful of a threat Vecna is, and the season does a good job at establishing that Vecna is not someone to be messed with. And I love the reveal, which I also was theorizing in a sense, not really, that Vecna was responsible for everything, where Vecna reveals to 11 that everything that's happened with the Upside Down is all because of him. And that Brenner was doing all those things with 11 and the water tank and establishing contact with the Upside Down It's all because Brenner wants to find Henry Creel / Vecna / 1. It really makes me look at the whole show a lot differently, as now it seems like we have an overall series villain with Vecna. And I think that it felt right. It fits what we knew from before. And I feel more terrified of Vecna than I do with the Mind Flayer. And I love that all of this was because of Vecna. Everything that happened throughout the show feels like it hits so differently because you now know Vecna is responsible for everything. The Upside Down's always been there, but 11 was the one that opened the gate. And that's where all this happened. I think that is a great idea. Their rematch in the finale was absolutely satisfying, and what added more weight to it was Max's fate. And I was so scared for her because it turns out Max's bones were breaking and her eyes were bleeding, and I was so scared because the other deaths were violent, from Chrissy to Fred and to Patrick. I was so scared that Max is done for. And it shocked me in that scene where Lucas cradles her. I was sad for that moment because I started to really grow attached to Max even more. And I love Lucas. And I was so sad. It was like, no, it didn't work. And then it turns out apparently Max is alive, thankfully. But she's in a coma. And we don't know where exactly she is. So I'm very curious to see what will they do with her character in season 5. Will they have to go on a rescue mission to save Max because maybe Vecna has her soul in a sense? Who knows? But I'm nevertheless real excited to see where they go with Max. And Eddie is a character I love, so it really saddened me that they killed him off because I loved Eddie so much. I love his friendship with Dustin. There's so many heartfelt moments with those two, and I love how he doesn't care about how Hawkins perceived him, but he did the right thing. So I love that he went out as a hero. And I know this show has a habit of introducing new characters just for them to take them away from us. Bob, Alexei. This is not really anything new. So sadly, I predicted that Eddie was going to bite the dust, but when it did, it hits hard. And Joseph Quinn is amazing as Eddie. And I loved his relationship with the characters, and so has this whole story he's been on ever since Hawkins thinks he's the one that killed Chrissy, and all of this was because of him and Hellfire Club. And I think that was done really well. It was a very emotional moment to see him go out as a hero. And that rock band thing he did in the Upside Down, love it. Eddie is a great character, and it was sad that they killed him off. And I don't know what's going to happen now, but yeah, I just loved him a lot this season. And thankfully, they did not kill Steve. I would freak out if they killed off Steve. I know season 1, I didn't really like him as much until the end, but season 2, I really started to love Steve so much that he became one of my favorite characters on the show. I love Joe Keery as a character. And there were moments this season where I was so scared. I was like, they're going to kill off Steve, aren't they? I was like, don't do it. And the ending of episode 6 had me so scared because I was like, oh, don't tell me they're going to do what I think they're going to do. And thankfully, he lived. And then the finale with Nancy, Robin, and Steve, they were all getting choked by all the stuff in the Upside Down. Thankfully, they're okay. But yeah, even though I do feel like this season kind of overhyped the body count aspect, I expected a lot more main character deaths than usual, but maybe they're saving all this for the final season. And in that case, I'll understand. And from last season, I really liked Steve and Robin's dynamic with one another. I love Maya Hawke as Robin, so I really like her again this season. And so as this how she factors into everything now that we get to see her work alongside the other characters like Nancy and Dustin and Lucas and Eddie. She's great. I love Maya Hawke as his character, and she's one of my favorite characters to come out of season 3. And I love the Hawkins storyline with the Hawkins crew as they try to take on Vecna, protect Eddie from people of Hawkins, and even Jason and the basketball club. Jason reminded me of that typical bully character. Not so much bully, but more like jock in a sense. I understood the character at first, but then midway through the season, I was just like, dude, you're being kind of stupid here. You see that Eddie did not do any of this. So I get him at first, but I was just like, he's gonna die. And I hate to say it, but I feel like that should happen because all he's doing is causing our characters problems. He's spitting out things that aren't true. And this is where I say sometimes the writing moments feel kind of odd to me. But again, they're in a smaller town where things like this, everyone's going to believe it. So I guess in that side of things, it makes sense. But nevertheless, I did think that what happens to Jason in the end feels very satisfying, where Lucas finally beats Jason and realizes that Jason is just pretty much a psychopath. And so as Lucas beating him, as Jason tries to kill him, and Jason just dies later on. Deserved. Obviously, that's a horrible situation, but Jason was always going to be a character. I was like, yeah, he's not going to make it past the season. Just mark my words. The Russia storyline here, I think, is really great, and it really does a good job of tying into things when you get to the finale, because I love Hopper as a character, and I love Murray and Joyce's dynamic with one another, so it was really fun to see them find a way to get into Russia and save Hopper after they find out that Hopper is actually alive. And I love how they depict how dark and bleak this whole Russian prison is, where it's like Hopper is in pretty much one of the worst places you can be in. And how the season really depicts the struggles he goes through to stay alive and maybe thinking, does he deserve this? And all that stuff. And I love seeing his relationship with Antonov, aka Enzo. I really like Enzo as a new character as well. I think he is also really good this season. And I love their dynamic with one another this season, with how Enzo starts off as a Russian prison guard and then he becomes a prisoner himself. And so as the fight with the Demogorgon in episode 7 was awesome. Knowing that Hopper had experience, he knows exactly what he's got to do. And when he reunites with Joyce and Murray, it is satisfying. Absolutely love it. I love the dynamic between Winona Ryder and David Harbour. And I love where the season wraps him up and seeing in the finale where they're going to lure the Demogorgons into an area in the prison and they destroy them all. But then David Harbour as Hopper takes out a sword and he kills that Demogorgon and fights it. That was awesome. Hopper is such an awesome character. And I think that was so satisfying that everything he went through in the season with being in prison, being tortured and beaten, finding a way to escape. And that's what happens. So satisfying. Will, Jonathan, Mike, and Argyle is a great new character. They had a storyline in California where they're trying to find 11 and get on away from the government and all that. That is the weakest storyline of the 4 we've had this season because it didn't feel like that was as important. You had some great moments there when they meet Susie, and even the shootout scene in the house I thought was crazy. I was shocked by that point, and it was crazy that apparently that they didn't rehearse it and that they actually did that in real time, and I was like freaking out. I was like, what is going on? And so that is a great sequence there. There are some really good moments with them every now and then, and I like the characters themselves. But they didn't feel like they were doing as much for the overall season because throughout a majority of the season, they had no idea what's happening with Russia. They have no idea about Vecna and Hawkins, and they don't know what's really happening with 11. So I feel like their storyline just sometimes dragged the episodes a little bit, so it never really felt like it deserved as much screen time as it got, even though it was satisfying that by episode 8, you finally get somewhere with them where they finally find 11. And 11 has a great storyline where we see her trying to just be in this new phase of life where it's like she's in a new school in California. You have to bully Angela. And I hate to say it, but I think it was deserved that Angela got hit in the head with the roller skate because she is such a jerk and a bully. I feel like she deserved it. Even though that's wrong, I wouldn't be like that harsh. But it was pretty deserved. Forgive me for change of scenery once again. I apologize. Things are, of course, happening in my house right now. So obviously, if you're seeing different places I'm filming in for now at this point. So forgive me for the second change of scenery in this video, but nevertheless, I'm going to continue talking spoilers. Millie Bobby Brown is fantastic as 11, so obviously I really like her here a lot, especially with her storyline. So after the Angela incident, she gets taken out of juvenile detention by people of the FBI, and so she reunites with Dr. Owens, and they go to a place in the middle of nowhere in Nevada, and we find out that Dr. Brenner is actually alive this whole time. We're after season 1 with the Demogorgon. We all thought he was as good as dead. But then we realize in season 2, episode 7, Brenner's actually alive. We never saw him in season 3. We sure never saw him physically in season 2. So I've been wondering for a while, where is Brenner this whole time? Will we actually see him again? Thankfully, we do this season. We find out that he's been alive this whole time. Now, we never see exactly how he survived season 1, but he did anyway. And so Matthew Modine is great as a character. I love we got to see him return again as he does whatever it takes to make sure that Eleven gets her powers back and finally gets ready for another rematch with Vecna, because he's always had a feeling that Henry Creel /1/Vecna is alive out there, especially after the massacre at Hawkins lab, which was very violent, gory. It was crazy, especially with how that's how the season started. With the flashback scene, you don't get the whole picture just yet. So I love how throughout the season with the 11 storyline, you start to feel like there's a lot more to it than you thought. And you find out that it was the lab orderly that 11 befriended, who we thought was very nice to her and all that. She gets out that tracking chip in him, which also dampens his powers, and he goes on a spree. It was crazy. It was big. It was crazy, even though I saw it coming, because even though he was acting so friendly, I had a feeling that something was up with him. Something wasn't right. And when that happened, I knew right away. I was like, yep, definitely figured that out before that happened. But nevertheless, I thought it was great anyway. And then we find out that's because ever since he was a child, he had this very nihilism belief that nothing matters, and with his abilities that he wants to destroy humanity and remake the world, and he had that belief and all that. So it turns out he killed his mother, killed his sister, and he fell into a coma and framed his father for it, to the point where his father slit his eyes out. And played by Robert Englund, which is great, Freddy Krueger himself. That's awesome that they got him on the show. And it was crazy to find out that the son of Victor Creel is our main villain. It's him. He did all of this, and Brenner found out about this. He started the experiments with him as one. So obviously throughout the series, you knew of 11. You saw test subjects in season 2, even though it's never really tackled upon again. So I love that this season you find out more about the subjects. You saw other members of Brenner's lab experiments, but you never quite knew who was one, the one that started all. So I liked the teases that about the mystery behind one, until you find out it's the lab orderly in secret, and that he's also Henry Creel, which ties back to Victor Creel and all that. And then I love that reveal in episode 7, where even though, again, like I said, I saw this coming from miles away, I love how it still plays out nevertheless, where you find out that he's killing all these people. He's killing test subjects, he's killing the guards, he's killing everybody. And because he started to actually develop like a friendship with 11, that he thought, join me and we can remake and rule the world. And that whole reveal where it's like why he's doing this, how all this started and all that, it's amazing stuff. Jamie Campbell Bower is amazing as his character, and I love that even though I saw the reveal coming, that it still was executed really well. And I love how it really turns things upside down, no pun intended. And right when it looked like he was about to kill 11 because she didn't want to join him, 11 fought back, and we thought she killed him, but then it ended up sending him to the upside down, where we have that amazing visual effects transformation where we see him be physically deformed. He doesn't look like a human no more. He now looks like a monster that came out of the upside down. And the makeup they put on him for Vecna is spectacular. Could not believe that was all makeup because that looked fantastic on screen. And so really like that, how that whole sequence played out, and it really just changes everything about the season as a whole, and even the whole show. I think that was really great. And then the government's onto 11 and Mike, Will, and them because 11's dangerous. I think 11's responsible for all this, so they're trying to kill her. But obviously we knew 11 is literally our only hope at stopping this threat. And so I love that she wants to go to Hawkins to save her friends when she finds out about the plan that Max is going to be the bait for Vecna, and with what's happening at Hawkins. And so I love that she wants to go back, but Brenner stops her from doing so and wants to continue the test subjects because he fears she is not ready to fight him again. And so the government stormed into Nina, and you have this really cool sequence where they're trying to get away and the helicopter is up in the air, they're trying to escape, shoots Brenner down, and 11, they're trying to make it out of there alive, and then Will, Mike, Argyle, and Jonathan showed up in the pizza van. Really cool. And even though 11 had the collar on her neck, she still brought down the helicopter in a really awesome sequence to show just how powerful she really is, especially now that she got her powers back. And Brenner dies. And this time it looks like it's pretty much as good as dead. Where after everything that's happened, with our teases that he's still out there, I guess he's officially gone. And he tells 11 just how proud he is of her, despite all the things he's done to her and the test subjects and whatnot. But I think that was wrapped up nicely. And so as you finally merged 11 back with Will, Mike, Jonathan, and Argyle's storylines, so now that side of things is a lot more interesting than it was before. And so I feel like as a whole, as much as I love the characters of Will, Mike, Jonathan, Argyle, I do feel like you could have tried to mash some of the storylines together so that it's not quite as overstuffed and you don't have quite as many things going on. But I do think they still did a good job at kind of mashing these things together once they finally reunite in episode 8. And so as leaving the ground running for the finale. Even though I do feel like Mike and Will were very underutilized this season, I do like that scene they had in the final 2 episodes with Will's painting and how the friendship piece and that Mike's the heart of the group and all that. I think Noah Schnapp was fantastic in that scene. I really felt for him, and I knew they were hinting something with Will that they never quite explicitly confirmed, but for me, I obviously knew it's about his sexuality. I think that was done well. And I do feel like they're going to tackle this in the final season because it's the final season. And it looks like they're teasing Will is going to have a much bigger role there than he did in these previous 2 seasons. So I do hope they do that because he is really great. I love the scene where it tells Mike that 11 loves you and that she needs you too and that you need her and all that stuff. And just that he's the heart of the group. I think it's a fantastic scene. And Noah Schnapp and Finn Wolfhard were really great. And I love that if you watch Will very closely, you can tell he has feelings for Mike if you look very closely. And they're definitely teasing that he is in fact gay. And I think that for Will, especially with all the trauma that he's encountered on the show, because of how all the stuff he's gone through since season 1 when the Demogorgon abducted him and all these things, that it's like he feels like he hasn't been as happy, especially when now he's away from his friends from Hawkins. And I think that scene is brilliant between them. And I love that little scene that even he had with Jonathan in the pizza place that they end up being in the finale, where he tells Jonathan about all of this and how you see just this whole thing, and it's just such a beautiful scene with these two. I think Noah Schnapp is terrific as his character, and I really hope that the final season does a lot more with him, especially for what has been teased by the end of it. I really like in the finale the pairing of Dustin, Steve, Robin, Nancy, and Eddie as they go to the Upside Down to destroy Vecna physically, while Max, Lucas, and Erica go to the Creel house so that they can lure Vecna into trying to get Max again, and so that he will be weakened enough for them to kill him in the Upside Down. That was awesome. Like I said before, Eddie's death was very emotional to me. As much as I love the character, I love how Steve, Nancy, Robin are trying to get into his house. They're trying to kill Vecna. And even when they do, they get to him physically. It was awesome with the way they remix everything from running up that hill to the Stranger Things theme as they kill Vecna. Was so cool. And I love that Steve makes the first hit, boom, Vecna gets injured. And then Robin makes another hit, boom, Vecna gets injured. Then Nancy shoots him down and Vecna's weakened. So cool. And especially because of what Eleven was able to do to him in his lair as he tries to kill Max. And that was great. And even though I am happy that Max is okay, even though she's in a coma, that this season did feel like they overhyped the body count of how many characters are going to die, because they really had me thinking that more main characters were going to die this season. And it just felt like Eddie died, Jason died, Max is in a coma, so it feels like a majority of the main characters are still alive, but maybe, who knows, the final season they're going to really start to double the body count. So there's that. And then because Max quote unquote died, what we first thought, and then a huge rift between Hawkins and the Upside Down begins to manifest, where you see that all Vecna needed to do was kill 4 people, which he did, and Max, even though we find out Max is not dead, just in a coma, but that gave the whole thing enough time for a whole gateway to be formed, because all Vecna would need is to kill 4 people. The grandfather clock will make 4 ringing sounds, and the last thing it needed, once all that happens, boom, the gateway can manifest. And then it really leaves everything into a very crazy scenario, which leads to an even bigger final season, where now Hawkins is in all this danger. People are evacuating, people are in need of help, and so as now everyone thinks Eddie's the one that did all this, and we all knew what happened. You have an emotional scene with Dustin and Eddie's father. Really beautiful scene. Gaten Matarazzo is amazing as Dustin, one of my all-time favorite characters, obviously, of the show. And it ends where they go back to Hopper's old house in the show, and you see these characters there, and you find out where 11 sees Hopper's alive, where they thought he's dead, they thought he was gone, and he opened that door, and she left it open by 3 inches. A really emotional scene. That is a really sad scene, and it was just so heartwarming to see these two reunite after all the madness they had to encounter this season, and that Hopper's okay, and then he's back in America after all the things that happened to him in Russia. And Joyce, and then they get to reunite with Will and Jonathan and Mike and Eleven and Nancy, Argyle. It was really heartwarming to see them all together. And then Mike and Will talk about how it's like Vecna's not dead, but he is very much weakened, but he's not going to stop until he wipes out everyone. And you see that the Upside Down, things are falling from the sky, and you see as the characters go out into a field that the field is turning black and white as Upside Down particles are officially falling from the sky. As you see all of this Upside Down particles start to loom over Hawkins, you see the red lightning, and it really teases that they're going to go to war, because the Upside Down has officially been able to cross over to our world as a whole, which teases that Vecna is, even though he's weakened, he's still out there, and he's going to come attack again. And so all that happens, our heroes look out as it looks like 11 is going to face off against Vecna once again in the final season, and our heroes are going to make a stand, and they're going to protect Hawkins, even if now the Upside Down can officially cross over to our world. And everybody watches, from Steve and Dustin and Nancy and Robin from the high school, and so as everywhere in Hawkins, everyone's watching as they see the quote-unquote apocalypse begin. And as our heroes watch, the season comes to a close, and that is Stranger Things 4. I truly loved the season. It surprised me in so many ways, and I loved it more than I thought I was going to. And even though I really liked the other seasons, this took the cake for being my favorite season. And even a few minor issues do not ruin anything I love about this season. It is massive, it's exciting, it's dark, it's intense, and it's done really well. And I truly loved Stranger Things 4, and it is one of my favorite pieces of TV that I have seen all year. And I'm really excited to see how they'll wrap things up in the finale. I do hope they give more focus to Will, and I hope they find a way to make it even bigger than this season is, and hopefully they go all out with character deaths next season. Really curious to see how they're going to wrap things up, but I am so excited to see when season 5 drops. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Stranger Things 4. What do you think of this season? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And stay tuned. I got a few videos coming up soon, even though I have the renovation. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below. So please go down while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button and stay tuned for more.